are in Judges, which is a very uplifting and just it just makes you feel good. Whenever you read it and all those things. One of the things we talked about last week, which was fun, was in this poem by Deborah, talked about her feet and all of that. And I was listening to a podcast earlier this week. It was talking about Ruth, and at one point in that book, Ruth uncovers Boaz's feet. And so there's also, and then that same thing also talked about when the cherubims are described and how the cherubims have all those wings, and with some of the wings they cover their eyes, and it says with some of them they cover their feet.
Yeah.
And so they were saying that could be the euphemism for they're covering their genitals and all of that. So that's Mick said last week, sometimes feet are just feet, but sometimes we cloak sexy talk in all kinds of different language, like hanky panky and all kinds of stuff like that.
But there's the term you better cover your butt.
Yeah, we were just talking about it.
Oh. Okay.
Why you weren't?
Oh no! When I was at the camera,
That's all right.
we're like, but yeah, cover your butt, like all that stuff, like that. Yeah.
Watch your back.
Watch your back. So that's that's all kind of there. I really enjoyed last week because I know about Judges, but it's kind of cursory, just kind of overall, and it's kind of fun getting into the midst of it as we dive deeper and deeper and deeper into dishonor, to quote the new sermon series, like that, into all these things. So we'll start. So we finished chapter 5, and we're going to get into chapter 6. Chapter 6. Imagine that. Let's see. Okay. All right. So, were there any more of those? I just wanted to look at the overall. You think I would prepare for these things?
Yeah.
Nah. All right. Yeah. Okay. That's what I thought.
I'm okay.
Yeah. Okay. I just need to print some more off.
I can move that way and then we can show.
Oh, you'll be on the camera though.
That wasn't the reason I was sitting down there. Leaving 2 seats together.
Okay. All right. Okay. So let's continue on here. So let me share this screen, optimize for video, click that button, and then boom. Here we are in Judges 6. All right, you guys online, let me know if recording acts weird.
Then the children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord. So the Lord delivered them into the hand of Midian for 7 years, and the hand of Midian prevailed against Israel. Because of the Midianites, the children of Israel made for themselves the dens, the caves, and the strongholds which are in the mountains. So it was, whenever Israel had sown, Midianites would come up. Also Amalekites and the people of the east would come up against them. Then they would encamp against them and destroy the produce of the earth as far as Gaza, and leave no sustenance for Israel, neither sheep, nor ox, nor donkey. For they would come up with their livestock and their tents, coming in as numerous as locusts. Both they and their camels were without number. And they would enter the land to destroy it. So Israel was greatly impoverished because of the Midianites, and the children of Israel cried out to the Lord. And it came to pass, when the children of Israel cried out to the Lord because of the Midianites, that the Lord sent a prophet to the children of Israel.
Thus says the Lord God of Israel, I brought you up from Egypt, and brought you out of the house of bondage. And I delivered you out of the hand of the Egyptians, and out of the hand of all who oppressed you, and drove them out before you, and gave you their land. Also I said to you, I am the Lord your God. Do not fear the gods of the Amorites, in whose land you dwell. But you have not obeyed my voice.
Now the angel of the Lord came and sat under the terebinth tree, which was in Ophrah, which belonged to Joash the Abiezrite, while his son Gideon threshed wheat in the winepress, in order to hide it from the Midianites. And the angel of the Lord appeared to him.
The Lord is with you, you mighty man of valor.
Oh, my Lord, if the Lord is with us, why then has all this happened to us? And where are all his miracles which our fathers told us about, saying, did not the Lord bring us up from Egypt? But now the Lord has forsaken us and delivered us into the hands of the Midianites.
Go in this might of yours, and you shall save Israel from the hands of the Midianites. Have I not sent you?
Oh, my Lord, how can I save Israel? Indeed, my clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my father's house.
Surely I will be with you, and you shall defeat the Midianites as one man.
If now I have found favor in your sight, then show me a sign that it is you who talk with me. Do not depart from here, I pray, until I come to you and bring out my offering and set it before me.
I will wait until you come back.
So Gideon went in and prepared a young goat and unleavened bread from the ephah of flour. The meat he put in a basket, and he put the broth in a pot. And he brought them out to him under the terebinth tree, and presented them. The angel of God said to him,
Take the meat and the unleavened bread, and lay them on this rock, and pour out the broth.
And he did so. Then the angel of the Lord put out the end of the staff that was in his hand, and touched the meat and the unleavened bread. And fire rose out of the rock and consumed the meat and the unleavened bread. And the angel of the Lord departed out of his sight. Now Gideon perceived that he was the angel of the Lord.
Alas, O Lord God, for I have seen the angel of the Lord face to face.
Peace be with you. Do not fear. You shall not die.
So Gideon built an altar there to the Lord, and called it, The Lord is Peace. To this day it is still in Ophrah of the Abiezrites. Now it came to pass the same night that the Lord said to him,
Take your father's young bull, the second bull of 7 years old, and tear down the altar of Baal that your father has, and cut down the wooden image that is beside it, and build an altar to the Lord your God on top of this rock in the proper arrangement. And take the second bull, and offer a burnt sacrifice with the wood of the image, which you shall cut down.
So Gideon took 10 men from among his servants, and did as the Lord had said to him. But because he feared his father's household, and the men of the city too much to do it by day, he did it by night. And when the men of the city arose early in the morning, there was the altar of Baal, torn down, and the wooden image that was beside it was cut down, and the second bull was being offered on the altar which had been built. So they said to one another,
Who has done this thing?
And when they had inquired and asked, they said,
Gideon, the son of Joash, has done this thing.
Then the men of the city said to Joash,
Bring out your son that he may die, because he has torn down the altar of Baal, and because he has cut down the wooden image that was beside it.
But Joash said to all who stood against him,
Would you plead for Baal? Would you save him? Let the one who would plead for him be put to death by morning. If he is a god, let him plead for himself, because his altar has been torn down.
Therefore on that day he called him Jerubbaal, saying, Let Baal plead against him, because he has torn down his altar. Then all the Midianites and Amalekites, the people of the east, gathered together, and they crossed over and encamped in the valley of Jezreel. But the Spirit of the Lord came upon Gideon. Then he blew the trumpet, and the Abiezrites gathered behind him. And he sent messengers throughout all Manasseh, who also gathered behind him. He also sent messengers to Asher, Zebulun, and Naphtali, and they came up to meet them. So Gideon said to God,
If you will save Israel by my hand, as you have said, look, I shall put a fleece of wool on the threshing floor. If there is dew on the fleece only, and it is dry on all the ground, then I shall know that you will save Israel by my hand, as you have said.
And it was so. When he rose early the next morning and squeezed the fleece together, he wrung the dew out of the fleece, a bowl full of water. Then Gideon said to God,
Do not be angry with me, but let me speak just once more. Let me test, I pray, just once more with the fleece. Let it now be dry only on the fleece, but on all the ground let there be dew.
And God did so that night. It was dry on the fleece only, but there was dew on all the ground.
Okay. Okay, so there's kind of get introduced to Gideon. So what kind of stood out to you with this chapter?
Not a brave man necessarily. No.
Not a brave man? What makes you say that?
Well, he has to do his work at night.
Okay.
He's making Doubting Thomas look good.
He's making Doubting Thomas look good? Yeah.
Not once, but twice he wants proof.
Yeah.
And that's a tribute to the Lord's patience, I think.
Yeah.
Also, in begging off initially from the responsibilities, is I am the least in this group.
Yeah.
And I conjured up the last shall be first.
Mm-hmm.
That's me. I'm done.
Yeah. I like that. But I think that's a lot of, and we'll kind of get into some of those a little more there.
But none of them are important.
No, they are. No, I think. Well, that's why I asked you. Like, why do you think he's a coward? Because that's kind of. I think that's a big point here.
Well, it's kind of harsh, but I perhaps would do the same thing.
Yeah. Like that's so. What else? What else stood out? What else did you see?
Because he was the youngest.
The youngest.
Sounds familiar.
Yes.
Okay, youngest. Youngest sounds familiar. Yeah.
Least of the youngest.
Yeah. And what else? What else stood out to you? I have all kinds of notes, by the way, like that.
You're just holding back.
Holding back. No, because that's. Anything else stand out to anyone else?
7 years.
The 7 years that comes up a couple times.
Yeah.
Like that comes up like the Midian right there at the beginning was 7 years. Mm-hmm. They're under the oppression of the Midianites, which is kind of interesting. So the one thing that this doesn't have anything to do with Judges here, but so the caves and the mountains and the strongholds that they're talking about here, the New Testament is silently shaped by these folks. So like the Essenes ended up coming out of that, and the Essenes were kind of kind of remove themselves from society. The Essenes are those that kept the Dead Sea Scrolls that we call them now, because they were those caves and mountains in that area could be. Now I'm not reading any notes, and it has no bearing in Judges, but that's kind of where all that stuff came from.
What's interesting in the Jewish Bible too, it says verses 7 through 10 are absent in the variant form from the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Oh, so the Dead Sea Scrolls don't have 7 through 10?
You're right.
Oh, interesting. And that's the those verses there are the ones where it's retelling the story of salvation, which I think is why it's here. They're retelling that story of salvation is that it's like, remember, God saved you from Egypt. You know, it's creating this narrative point line, and I think we see this every time that they make that narrative point again. We see it definitely in 1st, 2nd Samuel too. It's like, remember that God saved you from this, and then generally right after that happens, it's a time when they're not really trusting. Like that's, you know, it's like, remember how God saved you from this, and then Gideon is like, yeah, but I need some proof. Like that's I need you to do all over this one thing for me, you know, type of idea there.
Yeah, but he does that, but he's also saying, in a sense, if you did that, why are we how we are today? And you've already heard me say I like the Book of Judges, but
yeah,
I like it not because of all the bad stuff in it, but because of the good stuff that comes out of it.
Yeah.
Every time the people drift away and they think they're on their own and they think they've got it under control, the world falls apart, and then they turn back to God and He listens to them and He saves them and He redeems them, and then we got it now, down again. Yeah. And I think that's what this is going back to, is to remind them that God did this, and then Gideon says, well, if you did that, why are we like this now? Why did you leave us?
Yeah.
So I think it has some significance in that way too.
Yeah.
Of course, the more accurate question that Gideon asks is, why did we leave you?
Yeah.
Well, that's the actual question. That isn't what he.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, but I do think it's interesting that there's this story about the Egypt there. There's also all this Egypt language that's like verse 5, that it came with their livestock tents and coming in as numerous as locusts. Like that's kind of, you know, you get some colloquial language, but that would bring in some. So if you have a memory of the story of Egypt, that would definitely bring that in. Let's see. Then, so he's in the threshing floor, and he's hiding, which you get some indication there. Like, so he's hiding there in the threshing floor, and God comes to him when he's hiding. And I think that last is first and first is last is a big idea here. But man, Gideon really, it seems he really wants to just continue being last. Like that's like he's like I got no desire for anything more. And he asks, like Vance pointed out, it's like, you know, you saved us from Egypt, then why haven't you continued? And then what I thought was interesting, so we already talked about the least in my house, all that stuff, that he's scared. But then he's like, all right, I found saving your sight. Hold tight for a second. I'll go get a sacrifice. That's weird language. That's language we don't see too many other places. It's weird language, and we end up kind of seeing this kind of thing. I have a note on here that says that it's kind of operating on his time, on Gideon's time frame. You know, he's like, wait, I'll go get it. Don't go anywhere. That's, and I think someone said, like, God was showing patience. Yeah.
He really pushed it.
He did.
Yeah. And so he does the sacrifice, and then God calls him to to tear down the sign. And I have all these notes. I have all these notes about signs. Like, so God keeps, like, so we begin kind of this story, even though they said that it's not in the Dead Sea Scrolls, but the sign of, like, them saving them out of Egypt. And then he does what he does a miraculous sign. You know, fire rose out of this rock and consumes the meat. But Gideon is still like, and he's still like, oh, this is amazing. But. Can
you do it again?
Yeah.
That kind of reminds me of Moses with striking the rock.
Oh, like the frustration type of thing? Yeah. Like that's.
Getting water for him.
Yeah. No, hold on. What'd you just say?
Moses struck the rock to get water. On the way out of Egypt.
Yeah.
So he struck the rock to make fire.
Okay. Yeah.
Bush, I don't know.
Yeah. Maybe. Let's see here, and then you have like signs again. Like there's all these things, and he keeps doing these good things. He keeps doing, like, he handles the image and the altar and all that stuff. But it's kind of an odd little story here, because the people are like off with his head now, and then others are like, why? Like, this isn't able. Let's see, that's verse 31. But Joash said to all who stood against him, "Would you plead for Baal? Who would you save him? Let the one who would plead for him be put to death this morning." So, like, that, you see that there's people, like, they're starting to recognize, like, we need to put this Baal stuff behind us. Then you have the fleece, and again you have a sign, and that one you still have Gideon wanting, like begging for more time, or beg, like, it's, well, let's reverse it now, let's do this sign.
I don't really want to do this, so
yeah.
Stall a little more.
Yeah.
Well, Moses had the same reaction.
Moses had the same reaction?
Yeah, when God said, you got to go to Egypt, he went, oh, I don't talk good.
Okay. Yeah.
You want me to go there? They're going to kill me. They're going to get, I'll find an excuse not to go, God, if you just give me enough time.
Yeah. And that, like, in the whole "I don't speak good" comment from Moses. Yeah. And yeah, so that's all. No, that's I wasn't going to the Moses stuff, and that's a good connection, and I think we're going to see this kind of play out where this guy is like the least, and he keeps showing that off too, his leastness. And
there's not a little bit in anticipation of 7 and beyond of divine horse trading going on here between Gideon and God.
Yeah.
God said, okay, I did the fleece thing for you twice. I made the stone go. But now, this is what you're going to do. You're going to go into battle, but you're not going into battle the way you anticipate you're going into battle.
Yeah. Yes, we're going in, like, in a very least way.
You're going wrong.
Yeah. You're doing it in a very least way. And so that's...
Verse 32, therefore on that day he named him Jerubbaal.
Yeah.
But then it gives a reference in my Bible to Judges 7:1, where that is Gideon's new name.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What does Jerubbaal mean? Does it say that anywhere in anyone's Bible?
Nickname.
Ironic nickname.
Well, Joash put the name positively. Gideon had challenged Baal by tearing down the altar of Rome, yet Gideon never fully renounced the loyalty to Baal. So I've got.
So it's sort of tongue-in-cheek kind of.
Yeah, a little sarcasm going on there.
Yeah.
It's the nickname.
Yeah, does it? I was just saying what the nickname was, because I mean, it's often, I didn't know if it was like positive towards Baal, is it negative?
It's
a little backhanded.
A little backhand.
Yeah.
All right. Good. The anything else from chapter 6 before we get into 7 here?
I'm just noticing on my map that this is all taking place in the up, because they said go up somewhere.
Yeah.
And so it is in the east or the northern region.
Okay.
Seems to all be located up there around the Sea of Galilee.
Okay.
Various Asher and Naphtali and Manish and all that is located right up in that upper area.
Okay. That's good.
About the Sea of Galilee. So I guess that's why they said go up.
Maybe.
In here.
Maybe. All right. Well, let's get on to 7 then. Let's go on to 7. Let's see. We'll do this, and chapter 7.
Then Jerubbaal, that is Gideon, and all the people who were with him rose early and encamped beside the well of Harod, so that the camp of the Midianites was on the north side of them by the hill of Moreh in the valley. And the Lord said to Gideon,
The people who are with you are too many for me to give the Midianites into their hands, lest Israel claim glory for itself against me, saying, My own hand has saved me. Now, therefore, proclaim in the hearing of the people, saying, Whoever is fearful and afraid, let him turn and depart at once from Mount Gilead.
And 22,000 of the people returned, and 10,000 remained. But the Lord said to Gideon,
The people are still too many. Bring them down to the water, and I will test them for you there. Then it will be that of whom I say to you, This one shall go with you, the same shall go with you. And of whomever I say to you, This one shall not go with you, the same shall not go.
So he brought the people down to the water. And the Lord said to Gideon,
Everyone who laps from the water with his tongue, as a dog laps, you shall set apart by himself. Likewise, everyone who gets down on his knees to drink.
And the number of those who lapped, putting their hand to their mouth, was 300 men. But all the rest of the people got down on their knees to drink water. Then the Lord said to Gideon,
By the 300 men who lapped, I will save you, and deliver the Midianites into your hand. Let all the other people go, every man to his place.
So the people took provisions and their trumpets in their hands. And he sent away all the rest of Israel, every man to his tent, and retained those 300 men. Now the camp of Midian was below him in the valley. It happened on the same night that the Lord said to him,
Arise, go down against the camp, for I have delivered it into your hand. But if you are afraid to go down to the camp with Purah your servant, and you shall hear what they say. And afterward your hands shall be strengthened to go down against the camp.
Then he went down with Purah his servant to the outpost of the armed men who were in the camp. Now the Midianites and Amalekites, all the people of the east, were lying in the valley as numerous as locusts, and their camels were without number, as the sand by the seashore in multitude. And when Gideon had come, there was a man telling a dream to his companion.
I have had a dream. To my surprise, a loaf of barley bread tumbled into the camp of Midian. It came to a tent and struck it so that it fell and overturned, and the tent collapsed.
This is nothing else but the sword of Gideon, the son of Joash, a man of Israel. Into his hand God has delivered Midian and the whole camp.
And so it was, when Gideon heard the telling of the dream and its interpretation, that he worshipped. He returned to the camp of Israel and said,
Arise,
for the Lord has delivered the camp of Midian into your hand.
Then he divided the 300 men into 3 companies, and he put a trumpet into every man's hand with empty pitchers and torches inside the pitchers.
Look at me and do likewise. Watch, and when I come to the edge of the camp, you shall do as I do. When I blow the trumpet, I and all who are with me, then you also blow the trumpets on every side of the whole camp and say, the sword of the Lord and of Gideon.
So Gideon and the 100 men who were with him came to the outpost of the camp at the beginning of the middle watch, just as they had posted the watch. And they blew the trumpets and broke the pitchers that were in their hands. When the 3 companies blew the trumpets and broke the pitchers, they held the torches in their left hands and the trumpets in their right hands for blowing. And they cried,
the sword of the Lord and of Gideon!
And every man stood in his place all around the camp. And the whole army ran and cried out and fled. When the 300 blew the trumpets, the Lord set every man's sword against his companion throughout the whole camp, and the army fled to Beth-Acacia, toward Zerah, as far as the borders of Abel-Meholah, by Tabbath. And the men of Israel gathered together from Naphtali, Asher, and all Manasseh, and pursued the Midianites. Then Gideon sent messengers throughout all the mountains of Ephraim.
Come down against the Midianites, and seize from them the watering places as far as Beth-Barah and the Jordan.
Then all the men of Ephraim gathered together and seized the watering places as far as Beth-Barah and the Jordan. And they captured 2 princes of the Midianites, Oreb and Zeeb. They killed Oreb at the rock of Oreb, and Zeeb they killed at the winepress of Zeeb. They pursued Midian and brought the heads of Oreb and Zeeb to Gideon on the other side of the Jordan. Now the men of Ephraim...
Not yet. All right. Okay, so what did you hear? What did you think of this one? What was going on?
The term lappers by the water.
Yeah.
The Jewish Study Bible says, according to rabbinic tradition, the lappers were chosen because unlike those who bent on their knees, they did not bow down to an idol.
Lutheran Bible suggests that it's akin to a dog lapping, and that somehow the dog is more adept at battle, and hence that's why we're picking the lappers, the ones who are emulating the more valorous dogs.
So it's the ones like, all right, so what's the difference? Someone paint me a picture between the two and the ones that were chosen.
He brought
Yeah. And he chose the ones that were
lapping.
like that. Yeah.
So he brought the people down to the water, and the Lord said, Gideon, you shall separate everyone who laps the water with his tongue as a dog laps, as well as everyone who kneels to drink. And then what she said, lapping, connotates that they would not kneel before the idols.
Okay.
The false idols.
Go ahead.
Again, God is trying to beat into the people. When are you going to understand that it's me that does this? When he says, disperse all the people you have, I don't want you to think this is your victory.
Right.
Yeah.
It's my victory.
So, and that's kind of, so I may be disagreeing with some of this, but that's what this study is all about, like trying to figure out what's going on. Is the lapping actually the less effective way? Because if you think if you bring the water to your mouth when you drink, when you bring it up there, you're always vigilant. Like when you're down in the water, only thing you can see is the fish below you, type of thing. Like is it a way, kind of like what Lee was just saying, that it's keeps on stripping all of the strength away.
Because they have no strength, and they still don't understand that. Their strength is not within them, it is within God.
Yeah.
They can't, if they understood that point, the whole book would be written differently.
Well, and I think it goes back to where we find Gideon, is that he's not battling, he's not, he doesn't have this sword that's on fire running around and all that. Like, he's hiding. He's hiding in a place. And so, like, this whole thing seems to be like, hey, God saved you from Egypt. And I really liked all the Moses connections that were being made in here, where, like, God is saving you from this. Like, he can continue saving you now. And that really, like, so I don't know if that's valid or not with the lapping thing, but still, purging it down to 300 is a big deal.
It is from 20,000.
From what Lee said too,
22,000.
The Jewish Bible continues and says, according to Josephus, the lappers were the cowards.
Okay.
This is more likely, and thus Gideon highlights the miracle of the victory by choosing cowards.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's interesting too.
Yeah. So that was kind of like following along with kind of what I was saying a little bit, because and by the way, that's what makes this stuff fun, is that it's all about the figuring it out. Like that's, and we may not ever get to a conclusive thing, but it's wrestling with it.
The lappers are the least of it.
Yeah, like that's very interesting if that's the case.
That brings to mind something that was said to me by someone a long time ago that served in the military in Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
And he was, what's the term? When you guys you have forced to go into war. What is it called?
Drafted.
Yeah.
And he was drafted at age 25. Mm. And he walked up to the sergeant, and the sergeant said, "What am I going to do with you?" Because the sergeant knew all the 18 and 19 years old were malleable, and he could say, "Go do it," and he would go. So maybe these lappers are more.
Well, and also what we see here is that, well, let's get into like an actual verse with the verse 2, the very end of it. That basically, like, God is saying, like, you'll claim this victory for yourself. Like, it's I'm trying to get it to a point where you can't claim it at all. Mm-hmm. And that's you can't do it at all. So that, like, they purge all those people down to 300 down at the end, which is interesting numbers. Now, like, let's get into full-on heresy for a second, because I don't.
Yeah, that's fun.
Let's get into full-on heresy for a second. How old is, like, the Greek 300 story? Like, do you guys know what I'm talking about? Like, it was made into like a graphic novel, and all this, but it was like legends before that.
Yeah.
Like, is this story also kind of a mockery of that? Like that's, I don't know. But that's full on heresy what I'm saying there. That's they would not be happy with me in the seminary right now. But it's very interesting. It goes down to that thing, but it's not saying, like, these are the very best fighters.
Yeah.
Like, it gets them down to where this is what it is, to show that I will have another Jericho-like victory for you. We've already used that once in this book.
Horns again.
Yeah. They've got horns and all these things that Joshua in the Battle of Jericho. It's all very, they surround it, and basically everyone kills themselves.
Going to the lappers again, because of what you said, but also you said what I understood the lappers to be were the people who had their doubts. They scooped up some water and drank it, but what's this for? They doubted. Mm-hmm. Versus those who got down and drank because they thought, if we drink all this water, we can have it for some reason he wants us to do this. They were just doing what they were told. And so those were the people who were going to do what Gideon said, and the others were not.
Yeah.
They were the ones who would do what God was asking them to do because they were being told to do it, whatever. And so they didn't have the same conviction, if you will, to the steps that the ones who got down on their knees and put their head in the water to drink.
Yeah.
But the same thing. I don't know. It's one of those passages you kind of glance over if you don't think about it for a second.
Well, and what's fun too is that all these different study Bibles and commentaries and stuff like that have different opinions about it.
Oh, yeah.
I think that makes it fun. Like that's.
Yeah, and according to their religious theology and thinking. Too.
Yeah, kind of like what's
various church body or whatever.
Yeah, like what and where that writer is that month.
I like what Vance said, though, because if you're putting your mouth in the water, you're just sucking up as much as you can because you feel like it will strengthen you, embolden you. Whereas someone that just scoops up a little water and it's draining, it's just like, what's this for?
And so, but it wants you to get to that 300. So they purged the 22,000, which that's kind of an odd number. I can't do that, but the 10,000 is definitely like that's, and because 10, at least as far as my understanding is, 10 is like it's not complete, but it's kind of all. It's like, yeah, all right, that's all, and kind of this idea of just a lot there. And so they still had 10,000. They still had a ton there. And then it whittles them down to 300, which is not a lot. And those threes are used a lot less.
And those 300 saw, they were there. They saw the 12,000 leave. And then they saw it whittled down. They were like, oh, let's do what we're told to do eagerly. I'm understanding that.
And so but it was all done so that they would see that it was the Lord that was bringing them out, just like he brought them out of Egypt. And but they don't rest in that. Continue, Lee.
But God still knew that they were unsure, because in 9, that's when he tells Gideon to go down to the camp and listen to what's going on.
That's right.
So he's basically telling Gideon, don't worry about this. I got it in the bag. If you listen to these guys, they know we're going to come and they're going to run like heck.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah. So that's the Gideon is still afraid type of thing.
Yeah. I mean,
at a minimum, he's doubting.
Either.
Yeah. Or he's doubting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He's thinking, are you sure about this? Can we do a bigger number than 300?
Give me another sign.
So he got his sign. Go down and listen.
Yeah. Well, and finally he listens to the sign. How many signs has Gideon had so far?
About 6.
Yeah, like that. Like just
2 fleeces.
Yeah.
2 guys talking about their dreams.
Yeah.
It's 4 so far.
Yeah, and so like he comes over there and he hears about the dream about loaf of barley, and they come out of that and they're like, the Lord wills it, and like and they go out there. So, and I go back to that it sounds very much like Jericho. Like with the sounds and the breakings and all of that stuff, and I keep saying that because it seems like they keep coming back. And the reason why I keep saying that is that it's very interesting to me personally, because I've always stuck that Joshua in the Battle of Jericho as kind of a one-off thing, but it just kind of keeps on the story, especially when Israel needs to be reminded, or ourselves reminded. It's like God's got you. It's all right.
Yeah, when I read this with the jars and breaking the jars, I couldn't figure that out at first.
Yeah.
But then I thought, when I put it together with the Battle of Jericho, the walls crashed
Oh yeah.
So let's crash.
Yeah.
They don't have any walls around their camp.
Yeah. So that's
that's only me.
Yeah, it's only you. No, I think that's valid.
I think the horns are very interesting. Anyway, there was a story, and I want to digress. I'm sorry, but there was a story when we were living in Virginia. This guy came out and he was talking about the best way to protect your house. And he said, people want to put all these alarm systems up, and he said, frankly, they don't work because they simply cut the wire if they know you got a. This is pretty cell phone data.
Yeah.
Simply safe didn't exist. But anyway, he said the most effective deterrent he's ever seen was a motion sensor that starts with the sound of a barking dog. Mm-hmm. And he said, all you need is a little trip sensor on the front porch. He said they always come up to the door and knock first to see if anyone's home. So they come up on the front porch and bing, the dog starts barking. They go somewhere else.
Oh, that's interesting.
So it's the same thing with this. I mean, all these horns are blasting, and it sounds like there's an enormous army out there. Mm-hmm. But really it's 300 of them with 300 horns.
Yeah.
Well, and they have the torches and the jugs, and they're smashing those, which is igniting this huge circular or semicircular fire.
Yep. And that reminds me of like that story of Jonathan with his servant going up to the camp. Saul's too scared, and yet the Lord gives them the battle in much the same way as that. Like they all kill themselves basically. So it's very interesting. Now the one last thing I wanted to note on this chapter was the two guys they killed at the end. Mm-hmm. How did you guys take that? So I'll quick read it. Verse 25. And they captured two princes of the Midianites, Oreb and Zeeb. They killed Oreb at the rock of Oreb and Zeeb at the winepress of Zeeb. Like that's so. Did they kill those places and then the names were changed, or do you think that that's what they were called and they killed them in the places of their power? I don't know. It's a note right there at the end, and the places are named after them.
That's where they were killed.
You think they were killed in the places of their power, type of thing?
They were killed, and then they took the names.
Okay, so they named the places after kind of like tribute to like this is what we'll do.
Yeah, this is where we did right.
Yeah. Okay. I wasn't sure. I just thought it was interesting. It's a weird little detail.
Now, this is to let you know when you see that rock that this is the rock where this guy was killed because Gideon brought 300 men. It's a reminder. To the people of what God can do.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So it's like when they put a thing of stones up.
Yeah.
Do you guys want to go through chapter 8? We started a couple minutes late. Like that's good. Everyone good? All right, let's do chapter 8. Let's do chapter 8. If it ends up being too big, we'll redo it next week. All right, here we go.
Now the men of Ephraim said to him,
Why have you done this to us by not calling us when you went to fight with the Midianites?
And they reprimanded him sharply. So he said to them,
What have I done now in comparison with you? Is not the gleaning of the grapes of Ephraim better than the vintage of Abiezer? God has delivered into your hands the princes of Midian, Oreb, and Zeeb, and what was I able to do in comparison with you?
Then their anger toward him subsided when he said that. When Gideon came to the Jordan, he and the 300 men who were with him crossed over, exhausted but still in pursuit. Then he said to the men of Succoth,
Please give loaves of bread to the people who follow me, for they are exhausted. And I am pursuing Zebah and Zalmunna, kings of Midian.
And the leaders of Succoth said,
Are the hands of Zebah and Zalmunna now in your hand, that we should give bread to your army?
For this cause, when the Lord has delivered Zebah and Zalmunna into my hand, then I will tear your flesh with the thorns of the wilderness and with briars.
Then he went up from there to Benuel and spoke to them in the same way. And the men of Penuel answered him as the men of Succoth had answered. So he also spoke to the men of Penuel.
When I come back in peace, I will tear down this tower.
Now Zebah and Zalmunna were at Karkor, and their armies with them, about 15,000, all who were left of all the army of the people of the east. For 120,000 men who drew the sword had fallen. Then Gideon went up by the road of those who dwell in tents on the east of Nobah and Jogbehah, and he attacked the army while the camp felt secure. When Zebah and Zalmunna fled, he pursued them, and he took the 2 kings of Midian, Zebah and Zalmunna, and routed the whole army. Then Gideon, the son of Joash, returned from battle, from the ascent of Heres. And he caught a young man of the men of Succoth, and interrogated him. And he wrote down for him the leaders of Succoth and its elders, 77 men. Then he came to the men of Succoth and said,
Here are Zebah and Zalmunna, about whom you ridiculed me, saying, Are the hands of Zebah and Zalmunna now in your hand, that we should give bread to your weary men?
And he took the elders of the city, and thorns of the wilderness and briars, and with them he taught the men of Succoth. Then he tore down the tower of Penuel, and killed the men of the city. And he said to Zebah and Zalmunna,
What kind of men were they whom you killed at Tabor?
As you are, so were they. Each one resembled the son of a king.
They were my brothers, the sons of my mother. As the Lord lives, if you had let them live, I would not kill you.
And he said to Jether, his firstborn,
Rise, kill them.
But the youth would not draw his sword, for he was afraid, because he was still a youth. So Zebah and Zalmunna said,
Rise yourself and kill us, for as a man is, so is his strength.
So Gideon arose and killed Zebah and Zalmunna, and took the crescent ornaments that were on their camels' necks. Then the men of Israel said to Gideon,
Rule over us, both you and your son, and your grandson also, for you have delivered us from the hand of Midian.
I will not rule over you, nor shall my son rule over you. The Lord shall rule over you. I would like to make a request of you, that each of you would give me the earrings from his plunder.
For they had golden earrings, because they were Ishmaelites. So they answered,
We will gladly give them.
And they spread out a garment, and each man threw into it the earrings from his plunder. Now the weight of the gold earrings that he requested was 1,700 shekels of gold, beside the crescent ornaments, pendants, and purple robes which were on the kings of Midian, and besides the chains that were around their camels' necks. Then Gideon made it into an ephod, and set it up in his city, Ophrah. And all Israel played the harlot with it there. It became a snare to Gideon and to his house. Thus Midian was subdued before the children of Israel, so that they lifted their heads no more. And the country was quiet for 40 years in the days of Gideon. Then Jerubbaal, the son of Joash, went and dwelt in his own house. Gideon had 70 sons, who were his own offspring, for he had many wives. And his concubine, who was in Shechem, also bore him a son, whose name he called Abimelech. Now Gideon, the son of Joash, died at a good old age, and was buried in the tomb of Joash his father, in Ophrah of the Abiezrites. So it was, as soon as Gideon was dead, that the children of Israel again played the harlot with the Baals, and made Baal-berith their god. Thus the children of Israel did not remember the Lord their God, who had delivered them from the hands of all their enemies on every side. Nor did they show kindness to the house of Jerubbaal, Gideon, in accordance with the good he had done for Israel.
Okay. All right, so that's super fun. That's super fun. All right, so what stood out to us in this one? There's a couple things for me.
Well, my study Bible earlier and through here refers to the fact that this section of Judges is the earliest where the Bible talks about camels being used for military purposes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
I love the part in verse 22 where it says the Lord will rule over you.
Yeah. Like, no, that's a good note there. It's a good note. It seems like my little note I put next to that one is that it seems like the signs have finally took, even though it all doesn't end all that perfectly, but
the master of understatement.
Yeah. Even though, like but it seems like he finally has some faith in that, even though he may have taken it a little too far. Like,
and when he took the gold and and made an ephod, he was starting to act like a pharaoh again.
Oh, see, all right. You're using the Pharaoh language, which I think is good here, because it seems like there's some stuff that rhymes with Solomon and all of that here at the end of Gideon's life. You know, like that's all of a sudden he's got all of this wealth and he's using holy things to get their own way. Like he builds a holy ornament. Like the ephod is like a breastplate and all that stuff that the priests would wear that would go into like the Holy of Holies in the temple, in the midst of the temple there, and it was built off of the conquered plunder, off of someone else, and like it's just like I think it's not too subtle. That's why I laughed out loud. It's like, so Israel played the harlot there, like that's when and became a snare to Gideon into his house. That's an interesting note right there, right before the end of it. That it's like not all is well in outside the land of Succoth, and so they so that was interesting. What else kind of stood out to you there? There's a lot of brutality in this one.
Yeah, the whole.
Like the thorns. Yeah, go ahead.
Taking down the tower. My first thought was Babel.
Yeah.
And the thorns. I mean, I heard thorns and I went crucifixion.
You got crucifixion. You also got crucifixion. That's where I went, and then just now I went to Genesis 3 with the curse. The thorns and things like that would grow in the midst of all that, and especially if you're going to Tower of Babel, it's like this connection to a lot of the bad things in Genesis there at the beginning. That's like the thorns ate them up, like kind of, and then their towers are brought down. Like it's kind of interesting language. I'm not quite sure what it means right now, but there's definitely loaded language. And then as Christians, we look forward to the crown of thorns in it, and there could easily be some of this language in that this like grotesque, like power seeking, when God is actually saving from the midst of the 300 that lap like dogs. Like that's and another thing, like I'll need to remember to watch that, because that might preach in just under a year. Mark that. Like that's. No, I watch these videos now. Like that's later on.
Also, the narrative takes his journey, and from there he went up to Penuel and spoke to them in the same way. Penuel, remember?
Yeah, what was that?
That's the brook where Jacob had his wrestling.
Oh yeah.
Where Jacob became Israel.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, that's good.
That's a good connection. That's a good connection. That's a connection we're supposed to make too.
Really?
Well, because if it
got one right.
Gold star.
Like that's a connection where, well, and the reason why is that that's a huge place, and like I feel ashamed that I even miss it.
Oh, you should be.
but that's
You're our fearless leader.
yeah, like that. But that's a good connection.
Yeah, sorry.
All right, thanks for coming, Cheryl. But yeah, so that connection to the place where Jacob, like all that changes, like that's when Jacob stops trying to win. You know?
And let me interrupt.
Yeah,
also,
go ahead.
Jacob, like Gideon says, I've seen the face of God.
Yeah.
So it's echoing again.
Yeah.
And I survived.
Yeah. That's good. That's good. Where kind of are you seeing that? Well, yeah. Where's the pity? What verse is that? 8. Yeah, there it is. All right, verse 8.
Hurts.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Yeah. That's good. And then the face of God stuff. Yeah. All right. So that's and so I think that it's fascinating that you have all this kind of classic language in the midst of this story, like it's kind of telling this broader story. So we've got all these connections, it seems, that we're seeing today, these connections to Egypt and how God saves him from this little thing, but it's also going into this grander narrative of talking about the problem that you have Adam and Eve, that they go off and do their own thing. They want to be like God and know good and evil, and brought curse onto us all. And we see the curse in these stories about towers, arcs, and thorns, and all these things. And that we still see that even Gideon here, who seems to be doing pretty good, he and Israel still play in the harlot. They're still living in this way of the curse and all that stuff. That's cool. Like that's a good that'll preach. You guys will hear that again. Like
next year.
And he only had 70 sons. Yeah, only. He's got all the sons, right? Like that's 70 sons. Well, and it's cool that you see that rhyming with Solomon again. He's got all his wives, all his sons. He's making things that are important to the worship of God, making them out of things he shouldn't be, probably.
Power makes it fall down.
Yeah. It does. And so cool stuff. Well, thanks for. I wouldn't have gotten much of that without you guys. So that's good. So we'll end right there for everyone that's watching this pre-recorded on YouTube. Thanks for joining us. Okay.